Hi everyone, welcome to an episode that's as old as me!
You mean 45?
I'll kill you.
No, it is actually our 30th podcast.
Yay! We made it to 30.
We did make it to 30. In order to celebrate this milestone, we went back 30 years, specifically to the year 1988. Poison and Guns N' Roses ruled the charts. I didn't research what the top movie was. I imagine it was shit.
I was in diapers.
Okay. I was playing Nintendo. That's the year I got my Nintendo.
I was probably playing an Atari, my dad's Atari.
I had an Atari too, acquired from my now brother-in-law, who had an Atari.
Yeah, I was in diapers and punching my brother out. See, I was violent even as a baby.
Yeah, she was violent.
And I'm still violent.
She's happy little Nikki.
Yeah.
Happy to know. And during our Final Fantasy playthrough, actually, our white mage is named Nikki in the party, and she's able to equip hammers. So you have a hammer.
Cool. That's how I get to smash faces.
Yeah, all the bad guys.
Stabby, stabby.
Yep, and healing magic.
See, I can heal and destroy.
Yes.
That is pretty cool.
Though you don't hit for much in that game, let me tell you.
Yeah, I think mages don't really do much physical damage.
No. I'm currently in our Twitch playthrough. I'm right outside the Earth Cave. I just beat the vampire, but we need to take the ruby to the Titan's Tunnel to get the rod in order to lift the plate so we can go fight Lich. But, you know, we'll be getting to that on our playthrough shortly. It's going to be multi-part, obviously. RPGs are never done in one sitting, of course.
No, we don't think you guys would enjoy watching that anyway.
No. So I pre-recorded a lot of it, too, in order to level grind off camera, so we don't have to go crazy just watching me move back and forth and mowing down enemies and trying to keep you entertained.
I think you would rather us just stay linear.
Yeah,
from
that was tough enough, let me tell you, because I did the sliding puzzle. There's a thing in the original Final Fantasy. You hold down the A button, you press B 55 times, you get a sliding number puzzle. Beating it doesn't do anything, except unlocked an achievement, a retro achievement, so that was cool. But, you know, it's basically I'm providing commentary while trying to figure out this puzzle, and it's like, I think I mentioned Who Framed Roger Rabbit. The LJN game, not necessarily the movie. Which happened to be a big hit in 1988, mind you.
Yeah.
That was one of the big hit movies of '88. Let's put that out there. You know what else came out in '88? The NES properly. The NES was already out in a lot of test markets in '85. By about '87, it was in a lot more test markets. They weren't test markets at the time; they were actual markets. But the popularity of the NES really exploded in 1988. That's when 1 in 4 households had an NES hooked up to their TV. It was one of the most popular. They called it a toy, rightfully so, because Nintendo still reminded of the video game crash of 1983 in this country. So they marketed it as a toy, an entertainment system, and you know what? It revitalized the industry. But so many good titles came out that year in 1988 that we're going to go through a couple and talk about our memories. Now, mind you, I didn't really prepare the same list for the Sega Master System. Unfortunately, I didn't have one as a kid. I knew one kid on the block that had a Sega Master System, and we never actually got to play it. So, all right. So, where do we begin? Actually,
why don't we start off with the game 1943, the Battle of Midway?
Yeah, that's basically it was an arcade title ported over to the NES. From Capcom. Is a shooter. Basically, you were a plane in 1943 during the Battle of Midway, which, unfortunately, I came horribly underprepared and don't have a history of that. I know it had to do with the U.S. forces, the Allied forces, and I think Japan, if I'm not mistaken. Because a lot of it takes place over the ocean, and that was our main war for the most part. We, fought Germany in World War II, but mainly we were against Japan for a good majority of it.
Definitely based on what had happened at Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, but anyway, that was just our specialty. And this is a basic shooter. It was fun in the arcades. The NES port was actually fun. They did it justice. It was a pretty simple game to begin with in the arcades, so... Alright, next on our list here is Airwolf, based on the TV show. It's about a helicopter. I never watched it as a kid. I never actually played the game, so I can really offer no opinion on this one.
Yeah, me neither. I honestly, there are a few games for the NES that I'm not familiar with. Based on, I did come from a different era. Yeah, like, I was still in diapers when the NES came out, so I was definitely not old enough to actually play most of these games until much later.
Yeah, I got my NES in 1988. We had a video store very close to my house, so for the most part, I used to go there and rent a lot of these games. So Airwolf was never one I rented, unfortunately. This next title, however, I did rent quite a bit. It's the NES board game, quote-unquote, Anticipation, which we actually streamed, I think, sometime last year.
I believe so. It was me and you fighting against each other.
Yeah. We were, we have it on our YouTube, actually, if you feel like checking that out. It was a basic game. It was fun. I believe, developed by Rare. It was one of Rare's first titles. Interesting game.
Yeah, it was fun. It was cool trying to figure out like what the actual design was.
Yeah, some of them were like questionable because, think ASCII art taken to a different degree. And basically, you have Anticipation. It was a cross between Pictionary and I don't even know.
Trivial Pursuit.
I guess maybe Trivial Pursuit. I don't know. But, the cover was a bunch of people gathered around a NES, supposedly at a party. So they look like all young chaps. And, young chaps.
Strapping young lads.
Yeah, they were probably strapping something after this game. I don't really want to know. But, they look like they're having fun playing it. It looks like a really nerdy party. It's like, one of those nerdy parties, the heavy metal band comes crashing in and then takes over. And, I think I've watched a little too much.
Ready to rock?
I think I watched a little too much Headbangers Ball in the 80s. Alright, changing it up. The next title we have listed here, Bases Loaded. Bases Loaded was a hard-as-fuck baseball game. Developed by Jalico, who produced a couple good sports titles and a couple good titles on this list. Where do I begin? Alright, it kind of put an emphasis on pitching because the pitching view was the absolute opposite of which most NES baseball games at the time were, which is basically had an overhead view of the pitcher, an overhead view of the batter. And this one, it's taking it from behind the pitcher and you get to configure the baseball glove, but it was in a more realistic sense. I can't fault the hitting, I can't fault the pitching. It was top-notch at its time for an NES title. What I am faulting, though, is the awful fielding, because fielding for a lot of NES baseball games left a lot to be desired. Bases Loaded was definitely on that list.
Wasn't that the one game you were streaming and the ball went into the crowd?
No, that was RBI Baseball, which we'll be covering later on.
It sounds like a ball hit that car out there.
Yeah, if you're hearing horns, it sounds like baseball hit that car. It's very nice out. We have the windows open. I know it's February, and
It was like 80 today, almost.
Yeah, it is nice and warm, so we obviously were keeping the windows open so we don't sweat as much.
And for some odd reason, I am under a blanket.
Yeah, some Nikki's still cold and still under a blanket.
I'm not cold. I'm just nice and comfy in a blanket.
Okay. Well, yeah, you're not cold now.
I'm definitely not cold.
Yes.
I feel good.
Yes. But yeah, no, the fielding in Bases Loaded was terrible. You never knew exactly where to position your fielders when you see the ball coming. It took a lot of practice, and even then, the frustration level was through the roof with me. And this is a trademark of all the Bases Loaded titles. There were 4 in total for the NES, and eventually it moved on to the SNES.
I have the SNES one.
Yeah, it
The
is
original
not
cartridge.
fun. Okay, moving on. One of my personal favorite games, Bionic Commando, for the NES. It was originally an arcade game, which featured it was a cute concept. You had the soldier with the bionic arm. Instead of jumping, you attached your grapple hook to everything. The NES game had very, very little to do with the arcade game. The arcade game is cutesy. The NES is just a straight-up war game. you go through different areas, pick up items, etc., interrogate prisoners. But yes, some of the main challenge in this game is some of the grappling jumps you had to make using the hook, because some places you had very little to swing on, so you had to basically, like Tarzan, just swing from vine to vine to vine, aka your metal hook, then you gotta shoot your metal hook again, then, you know, in order to cross a lot of paths. It got really tough later on in the game where you had to make some of these impossible jumps over layers of spikes. Still a fun game, still one of the absolute best Nintendo games ever released, in my opinion.
It was re-released, well, not re-released, it was like a
it was, yeah. They remastered it for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and then they released a first-person shooter based on the same storyline. Mm-hmm. The re-release was pretty good. It was made by a Swedish company, and the first-person shooter was supposedly a pile of shit and bankrupted said Swedish company.
Yeah, I know most people probably went back and tried to play it anyway because Spencer was in Marvel vs. Capcom, so...
Yeah, I'm glad they were using him.
Yeah, it's good to go back to some of the original Capcom characters.
Yeah. The funny part about this game, it was translated from a... basically, it was a Nazi shooter. Everything was replaced with a swastika. You know, they replaced it with an eagle in the North American version. And the bad guy's name is Master D, who they're trying to resurrect. And Master D actually is Adolf Hitler. So the whole point, like towards the end of the game, they resurrected Adolf Hitler to try to rule the world. And, you know, basically to satisfy a lot of people, got to shoot him through a helicopter at the very end of the game and see his face explode in one of the most epically gratuitous examples of violence on the NES console.
Woo!
It was so satisfying. You literally you just see a cutscene with his face exploding. I don't know how this got past censors, but I love it.
Because the game was so hard that nobody bothered to try playing it for.
Okay, maybe. Could be. Ray, you've played this game many, many times?
I've beaten it once.
You've only beaten it once?
Yes.
Man, yeah, we gotta get you in front of a controller to play this, man. Yeah, I've beaten this game multiple times. I can almost beat some of the challenges, you know, basically go through one level with just a regular, you know, gun, go through another, you know, where you need the rocket launcher, etc. So, yeah, it's fun. Let's just put it that way. It's one of the most fun titles ever. Alright, directly below it, if you noticed by now, we're actually going in alphabetical order, so we're obviously on B right now. And my favorite hockey game of all time, it was released in 1988. Konami released this, and it was called Blades of Steel. What can I say about this game? Blades of Steel was the first hockey game I remember to include fights, and once you're fighting, it gets to a close-up of the fight. You know, you see your fist flying and everything. You have a power meter, and, you know, unlike real hockey, though, you know, where both guys go to the penalty box for 5 minutes, the loser goes to the box for 2 minutes. That's really the only penalty in this game, aside from if you're fighting right in front of the opposing goalie. You get a penalty shot, which, you know, goes first person. If the game ends in a tie, you get a shootout, which is 5 such penalty shots in first person perspective. You versus the goalie, you have to hit a direction to shoot the puck. Goalie has to match said direction. It's a lot harder than it looks. For some reason, I can't win a shootout, but I always wind up winning hockey games against the computer. It's just, it takes a while to figure out the tricks of the trade, but that is probably my favorite hockey game of all time.
And let's not forget, in the intermission between periods, you can play Gradius.
Oh yeah, they have a little mini Gradius on the scoreboard. As long as you don't hit start, you can basically just start shooting at this one ship attacking you. And then, it's basically an advertisement for some of their other games, because the Gradius logo pops up, and then another logo pops up, telling you to buy it. Tell your friends today, and then you see the Konami logo. It's like they're advertising their own games in the middle of their hockey game. Sneaky Konami.
Yeah, that's when Konami was actually putting out decent games.
That's true.
Unfortunately, now Konami hasn't had much success.
That's the problem. All these people get old and run out of ideas, and these companies get taken over by these people that have very little experience in the retro gaming market.
Yeah, with Kojima out of Konami, they decided to turn the Metal Gear series into like a zombie apocalypse thing.
We're not
with
talking about the Metal Gear series.
Yeah.
Wah.
It just made Nikki cry.
Wah.
I'm crying on the inside as well.
Yeah. Unless they make another Metal Gear Revengeance, then I could probably forgive them.
So what, the Metal Gear for NES, it came out 89, right? I don't remember seeing it on this list, but...
I think
It's
so.
on that list, yeah.
Alright. Yeah, because, we'll probably be talking about it. Alright, one of my other favorite titles for the NES came out in 88 as well. Blaster Master, which just got a re-release on the Nintendo Switch, actually. And I was playing the demo. It was actually fun. They updated the original game. They gave us the pretty dumb storyline, but then again, the original storyline was pretty dumb too. It's basically he fell down a deep hole, found this tank, trying to chase his pet frog. And this one, they're in some advanced civilization. They never heard of a frog, and they discover one. It jumps into a portal, and the scientist jumps into a portal, and bam, there's a tank. Storyline aside, it was basically an adventure game inside of a tank. Basically, you are piloting the Sophia, third, I believe it's called, through a bunch of underground caverns, go through a couple different levels, acquire different power-ups that allow you to go to some more of these levels. The one part, you have to get this beam in order to shoot down this wall in order to reach Area 2. Area 2 has another weapon, I believe, that allows you to access Area 3. Area 3 has the hover, which allows you to go back all the way to Area 1 and hover into a previously inaccessible space. It was a fun game. It was fun for its time. It's still fun. If you never played the original, please do so. Or, acquire it through the Nintendo Switch if you have one,
Or the remake, Blaster Master Zero, of course.
that's what I'm talking about, the Switch, Blaster Master Zero. Or you can do that, or you can, I don't know.
Acquire the game somehow.
They had a sequel, for the Genesis. It wasn't as good. Graphics were updated, the controls were a little updated, but the game wasn't that good. So, this series, I'm glad Nintendo's paying more attention to it again and re-releasing it because it was such a worthy platformer. It was should have been as prevalent as the Metroid series for Nintendo. But unfortunately, they laxed on the sequel, and 30-something years later, they're finally paying it attention. So anyway, moving on. The start of a really, really cute sequence of puzzle games came out in 1988. I'm talking about Bubble Bobble, which basically you are these two dinosaurs in a two-player game, Bub and Bob. Makes sense. And you have to go through, I believe it's 113 levels, where you fight a boss at the very end. It's basically, in order to kill your enemies, you shoot bubbles, you stomp on them, and they turn into vegetables and certain other power-ups you get for points. It has a worthy continue system. It's just as many continues as you want. It's just, your score resets, obviously. You can select any previous level you want, as long as you've beaten it. Of course, they also have a Super Bubble Bobble version, which makes it a little bit harder. Some of the enemies are a lot harder, and some of the rooms give you a little less time. If the time runs out, you don't automatically die. You get this invisible enemy, the Baron, pops up, and basically runs around screen trying to kill you. If you beat all the enemies before that, he disappears. If he hits you, your time resets, obviously, and you lose life. Now, the catch of this game is you needed to be two players in order to beat it to get the good ending, because for some reason you need two dinosaurs. However, if you beat the boss with one life left, you can press start on controller 2, bam, there's your second player, pop the boss bubble, and you beat the game.
Yay!
Fun little trick.
And, I think it's pretty well known now that if you're only playing a one-player game, you will get the bad ending. You have to have two players.
Of course, this led to a couple sequels, actually. because they've definitely reused these characters many times.
Especially in Bust a Move.
Bust a Move.
Classic series of puzzle games.
Bubble Bobble 2, Rainbow Island, I think, was Secret of Bubble Bobble 3. Parasol Stars for the PC Engine. That was, based on the Bubble Bobble series. It spawned a lot of games.
They are.
Yeah, this is a really cutesy game, but it's challenging enough where you don't care it's cute, you just want to play through it. Alright, next game on our list here is Bump and Jump. The only thing I remember about Bump and Jump, it was featured in a strategy guide I owned, and yeah, I've never got a chance to play it, really.
I had it for the Atari 2600. It's basically like a racing game where you have a car that can jump if you're above a certain speed. You can either use this to get over obstacles or land on opponents' cars and destroy them, some of which you have to do it that way.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
I'm pretty sure nobody's ever seen the ending of the NES version because it goes on so long.
Yeah, I've never played it, so I have no idea. I know it's the similar game. It looks like is Spy Hunter. I've played the NES version of Spy Hunter numerous times. Oh, one of our favorites actually is popping up here too. The next game in our list, Castlevania 2: Simon's Quest. What hasn't been said about this game?
Of course, the bad translation is quite infamous. It did break away quite a bit from the standard Castlevania formula at the time, making it sort of the black sheep of the series for a while.
Yeah, it was, whereas Castlevania was a platformer, Castlevania 2 was an adventure game where you had to go through 5 mansions in order to get all of Dracula's parts, or possess them. As the bad translation. You now possess Dracula's rib. No one proofread this? I don't know. Anyway, it was infamous for the translation was a little goofy, aside from the obvious typos. But the townspeople used to give you the most obscure clues. Like one of them just says, "Don't look into the Death Star or you will die."
Yeah.
What? There is nothing resembling a Death Star in this game.
Or any Castlevania game for that matter.
Yes. Yes, and in order to find this person that says this, you have to break away a couple platforms using the holy water. And, you're thinking you're going down to a shop, you're getting some powerful weapon. Nope. It's this obscure hint, you don't even know what they're saying. Another person just says, "Let's live here together." I'm like, okay. And, of course, there's the infamous tornado, where basically, in order to advance past a certain point in this game, you have to possess a red crystal, and you have to kneel on one of the platforms in front of a mountain for a whirlwind to come get you. The closest clue I could figure out for that is call, something summon a stranger, but it really doesn't. It's just, you know what? The only way you're actually going to solve this is if you pick up the accompanying edition of Nintendo Power, where it has all the tricks and trades and everything. Basically, they were smart. They knew what they were doing. In order to figure out half this game, you needed a strategy guide. And, of course, that issue of Nintendo Power is sitting right there. Gave away a good amount of the clues. So there you have it.
Made you want to buy the magazine then.
Exactly. So, I do have to take the Angry Video Game Nerd to task here for his review of this, because I'll give him credit. It launched his career. That was his very first game. It just popped up on the screen. This game sucks. And that was the start of the Angry Video Game Nerd series of, I don't know what we call them, web episodes?
What, webisodes?
Webisodes, okay. I don't know what the hip kids are calling it these days.
I don't either.
Get off my lawn.
I swear, I have to read, Urban Dictionary when I hear, younger people talk.
Exactly. God, I never thought I'd reach that age.
Me neither. I really did shout "get off my lawn" once. As someone I was telling the story earlier. It's very satisfying just to shout "get off my lawn."
Yes. And as far as Castlevania 2 goes, it can stay on my lawn.
Yeah, it can stay.
And I'll be playing that one.
That means Simon's got a whip. What's wrong with the whip? I'm just saying, he's got a whip. It's a cool weapon.
Okay. Moving on.
I have a whip at home.
Okay, not editing that one out.
Moving on.
Okay, this game called City Connection, I haven't played it. Have you played it, Nikki? Ray, have you ever played it?
I have not.
Okay. A game we are unfamiliar with.
I think I've seen footage of it. It's like a side-scrolling, like, driving game.
That's what it looks like.
But if any of our listeners have played it,
hey, hit us up, 240pclub.com, facebook.com/240pclub. You know I was getting these in here somewhere.
Why not put
Twitter at 240pclub. Our Twitch is 240pclub. What else are we missing? We have an Instagram at 240pclub as well. Alright, I covered everything. This game on our list, Cobra Command. Published by Data East. It's a helicopter game. I'm looking at it. I think I meant to rent a game called Cobra Triangle and accidentally rented this game, which this game did turn out to be pretty fun. It was kind of hard, but a little hard to understand as a kid. But you know what? I had some fun with it. It was like a helicopter shooter.
I was never good at helicopter shooters.
Yeah,
I'm not good at a lot of games.
Shooters are something that definitely takes a lot of practice. You're never going to get it on the first try. Never. Which was perfect for arcades because then you just fed it quarter upon quarter. Alright, our next game I'm sure everyone is familiar with here. Game released in the States as Contra, also known as Grisor or Probotector in other territories. Now, unfortunately, I found this out years later. We got the edited version. Apparently, was it Probotector had the was the version with the cutscenes?
No, that was the Japanese version.
Grisor? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it had all these cutscenes in its big explanation of the story, an expanded ending.
And animated backgrounds, as far as I remember.
Oh, yeah. And was it an improved sound chip as well, I think?
No, there was no sound chip.
No improved sound chip. Yeah, so, yeah, Grisor, yeah, definitely, what's known as Contra here. Everyone knows this as the game that introduced the Konami code. However, it's actually not the game that introduced the Konami code. That was Gradius. However, Contra made it famous. Everyone associates the Konami code now with Contra because having 30 lives in this game was very vital to beating it. Because if you could beat it with just the 4 lives they gave you 3, then you get a bonus life for every so points, then you are way more skilled than I am in this game.
Yeah, I've beaten it a few times without the code, of course.
Yeah, Ray's our expert player here.
One of our earliest streams on Twitch was us beating it with the Contra code while very drunk.
Yeah, we did enjoy quite a few cocktails that night. I think that was the second or third stream. I think we did Mega Man, and then right afterwards, none of us really wanted to quit, so we played that one, I think, and if I'm not mistaken, that was Chippendale's Rescue Rangers that night as well. Yeah, I think by request.
I think I partially remember that.
Yeah, I think you were passed out around that time.
Probably.
Like,
it was
towards
like
the end of that stream.
It was what, like 3 in the morning?
Yeah, we were playing until a good 4 in the morning at least.
Yo, and this couch is so comfortable. I'm surprised I haven't fallen asleep yet.
You ever have this sleepovers where, you know, basically you're over at your friend's house, you're not going to sleep right away. Mind you, this could be like summer vacation. So you didn't have school the next day, you didn't have nothing. So you sat, played old NES, the Nintendo's hooked up, you guys did 2 players, 1 player, all this, that. That was basically the extent of your sleepover. I used to do that occasionally. I used to show up, you know, sleepover with my cousins a lot. They used to have a lot of cool games, so we used to go over there. Used to play Nintendo till like 4 in the morning, all various games. Learned a lot of tricks watching some of my older cousins beat some of these games. I figured out a few tricks that I taught them later on. So, you know, it was basically an information exchange of Nintendo goodness. This is how it was back in the day. That was how most tricks were found. Someone found it at school, you know, you're like, no, you didn't. Oh, come over, I'll show you. And then they actually do it, and you're, whoa! I think Punch-Out was the same way. But yeah, we're getting a little off topic there. But Contra was one of those games that was like a classic at some of these sleepovers. Alright, the other game came out, Defender 2. I don't think I've played that one. I played the original Defender, obviously, in the arcade. we'll skip that one. The next one, Donkey Kong Classics, is basically just a re-release of Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. They put it on the one cart and discontinued the originals. All this did is make the original Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. carts for the NES collector's items, along with Donkey Kong Math and Donkey Kong 3.
Yeah, probably cheaper than getting both games nowadays, though, individually.
Oh, forget it. Alright, moving on here. Another one of my favorite NES titles, Double Dragon, came out in 1988 via TradeWest Company, developed by Technos Japan. Also, Technos has River City Ransom to their credit among all these other games. They have their own unique art style in some of these NES games. Double Dragon was basically ported from an arcade game to this cutesy style. The game wasn't cute, though, don't get me wrong. None of these enemies were cute. They just had a little exaggerated art style, but it was a rough and tough brawler, basically. It was like one of the pioneering beat-em-ups, and one of the games that we still talk about to this day in the beat-em-up genre is one of the tops. Yeah, Double Dragon for the NES was extremely good. A little buggy, but you know what? It happens. Also, it's the only Double Dragon game where you don't have all the moves at the beginning of the game. You had to earn the amount of points. Every 1,000 points, you level up and get a new move. Unfortunately, your enemies get some of the same moves, so by the time you're ready to use jump kicks, all the enemies are using jump kicks as well, and it alters your strategy of the game quite a bit. One of my absolute favorite ports of all time. Like, it's completely different from the arcade game, yet it still produced the same amount of thrill. Right, you have this game for the NES.
Not as a child. I played the NES version a couple years ago, and yeah, it can get pretty rough in parts. Like, the beginning of level 4, you have this wall with a bunch of bricks that just come out completely random and can screw up your whole playthrough. There's nothing you can do about it.
That was tough. Basically, you have to get through that with luck. I had this game as a kid in 1988, and I beat it sometime in, I'd say, 2014. As an adult, I finally beat it. That's one of these games I've never beaten until I was able to just finally, after multiple playthroughs, figure out the best way to power my way through it. Alright, moving on. The next game that came out in 1988 for the NES, Dr. Chaos, which was ported over from a PC title, I believe. I haven't played this one.
Me neither.
I have not.
I wish we had more to say about this game. Unfortunately, none of us played it. I know it's still one of these classic titles, because some of it's just so completely random that it's different from every playthrough. Like, you can't just pick it up and follow a walkthrough. There's some stuff that's static, but there's also some stuff that appears, disappears. I know it gets pretty tough from what I hear. But
maybe we'll do a blind playthrough.
Yeah, maybe we'll attempt it.
It might be kind of fun.
Okay, another game actually wound up released here is called Dragon Power, which was actually the first title, I believe, one of the first titles for the Dragon Ball series, which the anime at the time was nowhere near the United States, so they just translated it to Dragon Power. It's basically your Goku. And yeah, I haven't played it. This is my first time actually hearing about it because it didn't really get that wide a release. It was always one of those games that no one really knows about.
It was one of the very first versions of Goku. Now we have 12 different Super Saiyan versions plus original Goku and Child Goku, Super Saiyan 3 Goku. Was it God, Super Saiyan God 4? Of
course, while this is out, I believe the Dragon Ball Z series was still being released, season by season, unlike brand new in Japan. So
yeah, that was when it was brand new in Japan. It hadn't come to the U.S. until I remember the first time I ever saw it was in the year 2000 with on the original Toonami, but it may have even been before that.
We're going for another game, Faxanadu. which I never played it, unfortunately. Faxanadu was a pretty obscure title. It got a lot of notice, though. Nintendo put out a lot of feelers for this game, including the Captain N cartoon. Faxanadu was one of the worlds they frequented quite a bit, so they managed to get the game mentioned quite a bit on there. Also, one of these ancient video game, VHS tapes they used to release with strategies, Faxanadu seemed to be featured on one or two of them. So I used to see this game a lot. It's just, the rental store never had it, and I was too young to go to my parents and request them to buy it for me as a blind purchase without me, playing it and see if I liked it. I probably would have liked it back then too, because RPGs weren't really my thing until later on. Like, as you get older, you understand battle systems and stuff, and this makes a lot more sense.
I played the first few minutes of it and didn't really understand it at the time since I didn't have a manual with me. And now that I do, I just never got around to playing it.
Would this be something you're going to crack into eventually?
Yeah, definitely.
I think I will too eventually. Just sit down and hammer my way through it. Alright, next title in here, Lee Trevino's Fighting Golf. I did rent this title. Enough said.
It wasn't Happy Gilmore.
No, it wasn't Happy Gilmore. There were no fights. I was a little disappointed. Alright, next game, Flying Dragon, The Secret Scroll, developed by a company called Culture Brain, which I seem to remember they had killer advertisements for their games, as well as a contest in Nintendo Power for a trip to Japan, believe it or not, that has to do with this game. That's all I remember of it. I never played it. Flying Dragons, that's all I can say about it. I never played it. The ads look nice.
I've never played it either, but it looks fun.
Alright,
Seems like it's another game we need to crack into.
Yeah, I'm feeling like, the ads are nice enough where this game might be interesting, so yeah, we'll crack into that sometime. Alright, next game on this list, Freedom Force. Apparently it was a light gun game made by Sunsoft, who made some pretty decent titles, including Blaster Master. They were responsible for the first Batman game for the NES, a couple other classics. Sunsoft was a good company. I can't say anything about Freedom Force, though. I've never played it. The light gun was pretty gimmicky. The only game I remember aside from Duck Hunt that I really got into with the light gun was Hogan's Alley. So, we'll move on. Alright, next game, Galaga, Demons of Death. Galaga, I don't even think... Yeah, I did play it in the arcade. I never played the NES port. But going by the arcade, it's your standard arcade shooter. It was fun. Enough said about Galaga. Mm-hmm. If you haven't played Galaga, it's in your retro arcade somewhere. You could track it down. Alright, we're going into Tengen. Tengen was a Phantom company set up by Atari to produce games for the NES, and they were unlicensed. That's the thing. They never submitted these to Nintendo for their seal of power, which Nintendo, basically, anytime you're releasing software, Nintendo liked you to submit it to them for playtesting, etc., etc. Tengen kind of went around this step and released certain titles. We'll cover them in a little bit. It was interesting. They wound up with a fat lawsuit thanks to this, but they did release quite a few games in their span. They looked weird as NES cartridges. You're looking at these things, they look like an old Atari cartridge. However, they fit perfectly inside your NES and did work. But the title we're talking about is the arcade port of Gauntlet, actually, which was just as fun on the NES as it was in the arcades, except, the game mechanics were a little more different. Because obviously you're not thinking about feeding quarters into this machine. But yeah, if you played the arcade Gauntlet, the NES version is similar and just as fun.
Oh god, I remember putting so many quarters into Gauntlet, and then it would start to tell me, player 1, your health is going down, or...
Insert more quarters, your health is low.
Exactly. A funny story about Gauntlet, if anyone is familiar with the band R Noir, I went to go see them in... A little
background, actually, a Norwegian black metal band that, they're known for their album Black Thrash Attack.
Yeah, very cool band, very cool people. We were at a concert. I cannot remember the venue or the state. It was local. I'll just say local because I honestly don't remember the venue.
This is like New York or Maryland or something like that. I know they've come to that quite a bit.
Oh, you know what? I think it was Delaware.
Delaware.
Yeah.
Delaware.
Yes, it was Delaware. They had a big gauntlet cabinet is the word I'm going for. A big gauntlet cabinet. So they wanted to play the game with us for some reason. I believe it was. I don't remember which band member it was, but he was like, "Hey, why don't we play something?" He puts 4 quarters up for 2 members of his band and me and my brother. And we were just having so much fun. We kept putting quarters in up until they realized, oh, it's almost time for them to go on stage. So had we actually beat the game, they probably would have been late coming on stage. So
hey, that's a good rock and roll story to tell.
Yeah, it's cute.
You have these scary black metal musicians here,
and all they want
ready
to do is play video games with you.
Yeah, and all they want to do is play Gauntlet with you.
Mm-hmm.
Gauntlet is such a cool game. Ray always talks about Gauntlet, man.
Yeah, sort of.
Sort of.
I played...
Break into it, man. I want to hear you.
Yeah, I want to hear you.
I played Gauntlet 2 for the NES. Never the first one, though.
But what about the arcades?
Never saw it in the arcades until much, much later.
Oh, man, I used to always put quarters into a Gauntlet machine. That was just like one of those things, you know. It's like, it didn't have the acclaim of like a Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter or, you know, WWF WrestleFest. I know I used to put a lot of quarters in there. Every time you see a Gauntlet machine, man, you felt like more of a person every time you put a quarter into Gauntlets.
Oh, yeah, it was always so much fun.
Okay, the next game we have on this list is a steaming pile of shit. It's Ghostbusters.
Who are you gonna call? Shit.
Not Ghostbusters, not this version. This was basically ported over, I believe, from Apple II, from Amiga, from the Commodore 64. The same piece of shit game. The controls sucked. It was very unclear what you had to do towards the end. And even if you did reach the ending, that level, the friggin' when you had to climb the stairs to reach... You know, basically you had to face off with Zool if you've watched the movie. Which you don't face off with Zool, you face off with the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Zool just kind of disappears, and bam, there goes, you know. This game's a steaming pile of shit. Let's skip it, please, before I get more...
kind of scary, still.
Yeah, before I get more bad memories. Funny story, actually, in that game, if you took too much time, if you were just grinding and not even bothering to go to the... You know, it's called the Zool Building, which is actually, it was, you know, Dana's apartment in that game. The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man used to come on screen, destroy a few buildings, click game over. Its sequel wasn't a whole lot better either. Unfortunately, Ghostbusters 2 for the NES.
God, who the hell approved the second one?
Steaming pile of shit.
But I guess if anything is a movie franchise, a game will soon follow, and
yeah,
whether it's
as LJN knows all too well. A few of their games are up here. Alright, next game actually is Golgo 13, Top Secret Episode, which, if I'm not mistaken, was the first instance of a first-person shooter on the NES. It's because they had like these building levels that were basically a primitive first-person shooter.
I wouldn't know, I've never seen footage of the game.
Oh, this game was fun. It was very hard. It was really tough knowing what you had to do, but the first part was like a platformer. Then every time you go into a building, it kind of turns into a first-person shooter, which they later perfected in Rescue, the Embassy Mission. Also from Victoki, I believe. But yeah, no, that game kind of perfected it, and Golgo 13 was the start of it. It's based on an anime, a Japanese manga, actually. And yeah, I can't really go back into the manga because I've never read it. However, the game was a whole lot of fun. And it was more like adult themes than most Nintendo titles were. But the violence level wasn't really as up there. Although there's one scene where you're holding a sniper rifle, so. Alright, next game on this list, Guardian Legend by Broodabun Software. If I'm saying that right, because they it's a Dutch or Norse name.
Broodabun.
Broodabun.
You have the Norse one here.
Nah, but I didn't grow up in Norway. I don't know this shit.
The Carmen San Diego Company.
Okay. Yep, like that. They also made Battle of Olympus a year later. which is another game we'll talk about later. Guardian Legend, I never played. I've read about it. I heard it was fantastic. Everyone that has talked about this game has said it's fantastic, so this is probably at the very top of the pile of games I've yet to play.
We should get to it.
Should definitely. Okay, next game. I never played the arcade version until much later. However, I have played the NES port multiple times. It is based on a popular arcade game from Capcom. It's a Western called Gunsmoke. It's basically a vertical scroller. You're a Wild West cowboy, and you're going through the town, through the deserts. The only trick of this game is it had a weird shooting system. You hit the A button, you shoot diagonally to the right. You hit the B, you shoot diagonally to the left. You have to hold them down and press them at the same time in order to shoot straight. You got a couple different weapons, etc. But in order to exit a level, they just kept repeating until you got a wanted poster, and then you had to face off with a bad guy. It's one shot, one kill in this game. You know, if your character gets hit, you're dead. However, you can acquire a horse as a power-up that could take like 3 more shots, and then you see the horse die, unfortunately, but you keep on going. Following it up, Nintendo's own ice hockey, which... Let me tell you a story about ice hockey. Ice hockey's fun because you could make an entire team of really fat players. They're exaggerated fat. It looks really cute. They go slow as crap, but no one can take the puck off you. So basically you just get a team of fatties and you just tank your way through the opposing defense and then just finally take a shot. And, you know, it's a fun game. Aside from it being 4-on-4 hockey, yeah, it's basically, you know, the teams are the nations. It wasn't as good as Blades of Steel, but we had a lot of fun playing this game. The music will get into your head for days. It's the same like little happy tune Nintendo knew they were doing with this one. It's worth a play. If you have an NES Classic, it's already on there, so you have no excuse. Just break it open and play. Alright, another game here. Coyote Warriors 2 Victory Road. I don't think I've played this one. I've played the first one, and it's a steaming pile of shit.
I'm not familiar with the second one.
Me either.
Myself, but...
Alright, Coyote Warriors 2, we are just going to skip then. Alright, next game, Iron Tank, The Invasion of Normandy. It's basically another game, SNK game. SNK released quite a bit for the NES around this time. Well, most of them were war games, but Iron Tank was basically supposed to be a tank sim, The Invasion of Normandy during World War II. It's not quite that realistic where, you know, because you have power-ups and stuff, and, you know, it's basically you're shooting like heat blasts and everything. But it was a game, it was kind of similar to, what was the other game that came out? Guerrilla Warriors, which is an arcade game. And also from SNK. They were fun. I don't have much to say about it. I haven't played too much of this game, but it was like halfway decent. One gripe I have though about SNK games, I'm going to put this right out there. SNK, anytime you're playing an SNK game, it used to start off with a white screen. It would be blank, just a white screen for a second, and then the SNK logo would pop up like maybe a second and a half in. This was extremely frustrating when you're playing an NES. You're putting the title in, you have a gray screen, which means the title, you know, the thing's connected but not all the way, so it's not reading, or it has dust in the middle. You know how NES games were. That's why I used to blow on them. So, you know, you used to play around and you'd be like, okay, is it working? But no, you'd have to actually wait a second and a half for that SNK logo to pop up, or else, you know, you might just have like a frozen white screen. Or, you know, if the SNK logo popped up all fucked up, you have to restart, get the alcohol and the Q-tip, and restart that again. It's very frustrating, SNK. You trolls.
Fun time.
Yes.
But I would forgive them for the Fatal Fury.
Yeah, they did release...
They released some pretty sweet fighting games.
Whole amount of quality titles. And also Metal Slug, they were responsible for Metal Slug. Mm-hmm. And of course, they later on were the proprietors of the Neo Geo system. Which, you know, if you had $650 lying around sometime in 1992, why not go out and purchase it? Me, on the other hand, you know, I was broke. I was lucky I got a Genesis.
I was lucky I got that Super Nintendo.
Anyway, moving on. Another Konami game called Jackal, which I never played. I just am familiar with this game because the Blades of Steel, that screen again, while you're between the second and third periods playing Gradius, the logo for this game pops up, and the Konami's telling you, "Hey, go buy the rest of our titles this year."
I'm not familiar with Jackal either.
It's a top-down shooter where you're like playing as a truck or something.
I think it's truck or a jeep. I think.
I made it to the final boss, but never beat him. It's a fun little arcade shooting game.
Next in our titles here, the NES version of Jeopardy, the game show. I used to remember also that Jeopardy would include it as one of their prizes. Actually, you got the Jeopardy Home Edition for NES. So Jeopardy was supported 3 players. Some players shared a controller. The categories, as a kid, some of this stuff was actually really tough. As an 8-year-old playing this, I didn't know any of the categories, so I needed like the kids edition, which came out a year or 2 later, or the sports edition. But playing it as adults, it's like, in 2018 terms, playing this game, it's basically a trivia of the 80s. If you're trying to host a nice 80s party, this is actually a pretty good party game to boot up, because it's all trivia from 80s, obviously from 88 backwards, including some TV stuff, sports. It really tests your knowledge of the 80s at this point, and some like 80s hodgepodge of various knowledge and trivia.
I believe you and I streamed this game once.
We did, actually. We did a few, actually. I think we did this, and then we did the Jeopardy for the SNES.
I think so. Yeah, it was fun.
Alright, moving on, also, on the NES version of Joust. Never played the NES version of Joust. I played the arcade version of Joust. Basically, you are an ostrich knight. It's really cute. You fly around and essentially joust some of the enemies. It was a fun game. It was fun in the arcade. It was definitely a quarter muncher, but you could definitely get your money's worth playing Joust. I know it is currently in our arcade near us, so if we want to go play the arcade version, just need a couple quarters and head down there. Alright, moving on, Karnov from Data East. Never played Karnov. Karnov's the Circus Strongman. He was also the main boss in Area 1 of Bad Dudes.
I believe at one point Karnov was the ultimate mascot for Data East.
Yeah, he appeared in a couple of their games.
Yeah, I think they came out with a sequel called Karnov's Revenge, but it was actually a fighting game.
That's interesting. I'll look that up.
Yeah, I saw it on... I do have a Tumblr account, so I was on Tumblr. And I follow a lot of fighting game communities on there. So one of the fighting game fan pages that I liked had this thing called Carnovember. I think it was. Yeah, it was cute. So like all November, they would just post stuff from every Karnov game.
Nice.
And Karnov's Revenge was one of them. And
nice.
It was cool. It was like a cute little like SNK type fighting game, and which is something I do need to check out. But it was cute.
The NES game though was just a basic like side-scrolling like shooter, like a sort of an action game. It had some pretty weird physics. Like Karnov would like fall really slowly after jumping and so on. You could only take like 2 hits before you were killed, so that was kind of annoying. But you could get like upgrades to shoot further, and you had like an inventory system with ladders and bombs and stuff.
Seems like a fun game.
Yeah, it was cool.
I mean, 2 hits is actually pretty generous considering, Contra only gave you 1 hit.
Pretty much.
Alright, moving on. Actually, another Capcom title called Legendary Wings. A shooter, you're basically an angel. The game, according to this description, Greek mythos-themed world. Magical wings flying across,
Just don't fly too close to the sun.
Yeah, I guess that's the lesson for today. I believe I've rented this before. It seemed like it was fun, but it didn't really grab me, honestly. If a similar title that came out later from Capcom was called Forgotten Worlds. That was ported over to the Genesis by Sega, and NEC ported the TurboGrafx CD version. which that game was basically similar, only except you were able to buy weapons satellites instead of, just having your default weapon. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Legendary Wings was like not quite a prequel to that, but similar in design.
I guess a spiritual prequel.
Yeah.
Spiritual prequel.
Honest though, I don't really see any point in playing it today when you do actually live in a world that Forgotten Worlds is a game. Now, however, this shooter coming up next is timeless. The game, of course, Life Force, which was a sequel to Gradius. It didn't have the Gradius name on it, however, it was advertised as the sequel to Gradius. Also, there was a Gradius 2 released only in Japan that was completely different from this game. So, confused yet? I know I am a little bit, but Life Force was a fun game. Basically, if I'm not mistaken, you are going through the digestive system of a very large alien, and you have to go through all these worlds fighting basically objects in his stomach, because this very large alien devoured an entire solar system. You could get power upgrades in true Gradius fashion. You had to enact them. You can keep getting speed power-ups. If you don't use your speed power-up and you acquire another one, it moves on to like gun, secondary weapon, which is usually like missiles. Moved on. Eventually, you get a force field. And if you get 7 of them, you have them in your inventory. You get something where you destroy every enemy on screen, which is quite handy if you were surrounded and basically screwed. Alright, this next game I'm looking at on here, developed by FCI, a game called Mag Max, not to be confused with Mad Max. I've never played this one.
Although the names do sound familiar.
They do.
They're not familiar, similar is the word I want to say.
They do. Alright, moving on. Alright, Major League Baseball, developed by LJN. I remember this because it was extremely confusing. You literally, whereas most NES baseball games, you could pick a team, you get put out on the field, etc., etc. This game, you had, before you could even hit the field, you had to pick a lineup. And you don't have any positions labeled, nothing. Unless you know the real-life stats of whatever team you picked, you are putting guys way out of position. And it's not, they don't even use the real player names because this didn't have an MLB PA license. It just had the Major League Baseball license. So you were getting the authentic Major League team in 1988, but you're also only getting the player numbers. So literally, you had to have, let's just say, I'm going to use the Philadelphia Phillies as an example. I make no apologies, I'm a Phillies fan. Hopefully that doesn't alienate some of you out there who might be Mets fans or whatever other team plays us quite a bit. I married a Mets fan, so there you go. Basically, you're playing this game. As a kid, you boot it up, you pick your favorite baseball team. Now, it comes to the lineup selection, so you had to go through all this scrolling, in order to pick position players to load up on your team. And you had to pick a lineup 1 through 9, or 1 through 8 and then a pitcher. And going through it, you're just looking at stats. You're like, okay, I see their batting average, their home run totals, RBIs, etc. But the players are just a player number, and it doesn't say what position they play. So it's like, all right, what am I going to do? All right, you're supposed to play third base. What is this? I got to click that. I got to click that. Oh, wait a minute. I have 5 infielders. I can't play. I can't put that lineup out there. So I got to pick a different lineup. And you get that annoying doo-doo sound every time you do something wrong. LJN is known for some of the games being not up to quality, as pointed out by many, many reviewers over the years. And this is a total example of, quote, the angry video game nerd, laughing, joking numbnuts, putting out an awful, awful baseball title that, oh yeah, just in case you did figure it out by the 7th inning stretch, it asked you to do something for the lineup, just in case you want to change stuff through the lineup. So basically, you're going through your lineup again, sitting there like, I just want to finish the game, I don't want to go through 9 player positions again.
Yeah.
Moving on. The original Metal Gear was actually released in 1988, and it was completely different from those players that were introduced via Metal Gear Solids. But it's the same concept. It was extremely hard to fight all of the enemies in this game, so you weren't even going to bother, you were going to lose quickly. Basically, the first few screens, ironically enough, some of the hardest in the game, you have to basically hide, sneak through, and wait until enemies are asleep in order to plot your course out in order to not get attacked. If you don't get attacked for a certain amount of time, you make it to the enemy base. This game was also known for a terrible translation. Every time you walk into a truck, it says, "Oh no, the truck have started to move." It's definitely for the English-loving community out there.
That's Kojima for you.
Yeah, they totally fucked up that translation,
man.
but you know what? It was a fun game. I can still boot this up and start playing and have a blast here.
I think we should do that sometime.
We will. We're giving ourselves a lot of ideas to break out some of these games on Twitch. As a matter of fact, we are actually going to throughout the course of the year, since we're celebrating 1988, one of the best years in video gaming history. We will be doing that, as well as 1998, which is also a really good year in gaming. So we'll be breaking out titles for both years to celebrate the 30th, 20th anniversary. Fortunately, 2008 is a little well beyond the 240p error, so we'll be skipping that, unfortunately. But that's okay. Alright, next game is the arcade translation of Millipede. Millipede, obviously, sequel to Centipede, which was developed in 1982, I believe. The Nintendo version looks a little confusing, just a bunch of dots. I'm assuming they just had the license, they tried to put it out, and then, just didn't really take notice at that point because, Nintendo's been out for a couple of years. Who's playing these ancient arcade games? Who wants to go play a Millipede? You'll play it if, you're in the deli waiting for a sandwich, and you see a Millipede machine sitting there lonely in the corner. Yeah, you'll pop a quarter in there to kill some time, but you're not going to go request this game for a good report card after you left school, have a good report card, your parents want to buy you something for it. Like, hi, can I get a Millipede? No, 1988, you were asking for Metal Gear, you were asking for Super Mario 2, or you were asking for many of the other titles on this list. Double Dragon, Blaze of Steel. You're not asking for Millipede. However, that said, Millipede
well, maybe some kids were.
Maybe. I don't know.
You never know.
Alright, our next game is actually Mel's personal favorite here, our behind-the-scenes gal here. Mylan's Secret Castle. You know what? This game receives a lot of flack for its randomness, its fact that you have to shoot walls in order to figure out shit, or the fact that, some of it's just so random. You're going to tear your hair out trying to figure it out. However, it did translate into a really fun game. It was a Hudson Soft smash hits, and it did receive a lot of praise. Mel, since you've played it, why don't you chime in?
Yeah, it certainly is random. You hit the nail right on the head.
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty fun just shooting at the wall and different blocks and seeing things appear. Or, door.
Shoot basically,
yeah.
Shoot basically in the air and doorway appears, and it was interesting. There's a series of games that was around that time with very similar concept of shooting things at random. I know the Mickey Mousecapade game was kind of like that and that was developed by Capcom. You had to shoot at random things, and power-ups would pop up or extra lives. So it was a design that was used and reused throughout the NES history. Absolutely. Alright, next game is Othello. I know they re-released Othello with the 7-Up Spot character later on and called it Spot. But basically Othello is like a board game. You're capturing your enemies' dots, using your own dots. It's basically a board game. It's... Yeah,
never good at it.
Yeah, Othello kind of got eclipsed by Spot because Spot added some animations to the game, and yeah. So anyway, next game, Paperboy.
Oh god.
Paperboy. Oh man, Paperboy.
Memories.
Yes, Paperboy was actually interesting for the fact that you your aim, basically you had to really play this over and over again to get the aim down, to even reach the newspaper to your neighbor's front door to get the 300 points, let alone the mailbox for 750. Now, mind you, if you manage to break a window along the way, they are no longer a subscriber, and the next day they appear in red. Now, here's the funny part. The red houses are non-subscribers. You can break their windows and convince them to subscribe. You get points for doing that. Fortunately, some of these houses have cannons, the Grim Reaper, a bunch of tires just randomly show up, biker gangs every time you cross the street. This is ridiculous.
And dogs flying out.
Dogs flying at you, ladies coming out with purses chasing you.
Yo, they would chase you down with...
They would, yeah, that's crazy.
Like, holy
this game.
shit, but this kid is just trying to have a day job.
And as soon as you're done, you get to the bonus stage where you're throwing newspapers through targets and stuff. And, oh yeah, you can still lose a life there, but if you lose a life, then you still beat the level. It's just, oh yeah, you're down a life.
I mean, he's just trying to have a day job.
Yeah.
Maybe he wants to take a girl out to the movies or something.
It was an interesting execution, you know, an interesting concept, let's put it that way. But the execution leaves a little something to be desired. This was improved a bit in Paperboy 2 for the SNES. So if you're going to get a version of this title, probably want to do that one.
Yeah, it's a little bit more fine-tuned.
Yeah, next game, Platoon. Platoon was based on the 1986 movie. Charlie Sheen was in it. It was one of his first movies. A few other people were in it. I don't have this sheet in front of me. Platoon was basically, it took place in the Vietnam War, and yeah, I was a little confused by it. It was developed by Sunsoft. It seemed like it was one of those games that was, how should we say it, confusing enough for an 8-year-old where, you know, you wanted to basically just give it to an older sibling or someone else to play it, you know. I can imagine you might have a different experience with it if you've grown up, you know, you're a little older around that time. You know, let's say you're like 12, 15 years old around 1988. This game might be a little more up your alley. For me, it's like, I believe I was like 6 years old when it came out. I think I played it at like 7 or 8, you know, because the video store had it for rent. Wasn't a fan.
Yeah, I'm unfamiliar with this game.
It's not something I'd really think I'd revisit today, to be honest with you. Alright, next game on this list is something I'm very familiar with, however. RBI Baseball! RBI Baseball was really fun. It had actual players through the 1988 season. It was goofy cartoon looking. The players were nice and chubby. It was just and like, you know, it was just the same animation for every player, just different pictures. The fielding was like almost impossible. I was able to lay quite a few inside the park home runs. And oh yeah, on Twitch, if you don't believe me, you could go, actually, it's not on Twitch right now, it's on YouTube. If you go on our YouTube channel at 240p Club and check out some of our past playthroughs. I did a summer playthrough. RBI Baseball was one of the games played, and they had this one extremely funny glitch where I wound up throwing the ball into the stands, and everyone in the park legged in a home run thanks to me throwing it by accident into the stands.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, Nikki was actually watching and seeing it and was like, oh my god!
And I laughed at his misery.
My jaw dropped. This is one of the most unique moments, I think, in Twitch history. And if we ever do a compilation video of highlights, mishaps, and lowlights, this is definitely going to pop up sooner or later.
On top of all my Pilot Wings crashes?
Yeah, we still have to film a lot of your Pilot Wings crashes,
I kicked the baby Yoshi, too!
And you kicked the baby Yoshi off the cliff.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That poor baby Yoshi. Yo, I had to do like an apology post after that.
Yeah, Peter was going after you, let me tell you.
We don't condone kicking little baby Yoshi.
Kicking a baby Yoshi off a cliff.
I mean, it wasn't even like an accidental push. It was like,
no, just like
a punt, like a football punt.
Mario just booted a baby Yoshi fresh from his egg. Pops out of the egg. He's bouncing around. Hello, world.
No!
Reminds me of that scene in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy when they accidentally turn 2 nuclear missiles into a sperm whale and a bowl of petunias.
Yeah.
And the bowl of petunias goes, not again, which, if we understand what that meant, we'd understand the nature of the universe that much better. And the whale, having just come into existence, had to basically get to know its surroundings in about a minute and a half before it fell splat into the ground. His last words were, "Hey, I call that ground. I wonder if he'll be friends with me."
Oh no!
Please read those books. Highly, highly recommended. All the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy books are hilarious.
Don't kick Baby Yoshi.
And please don't kick Baby Yoshi's off a cliff.
Shame.
Alright, yeah, now next game from released in 1988, Racket Attack. Jalco, another one, Jalco Sports for NES. Tennis. I was very confused with tennis at the time. I don't really remember this game so well. Remember it? Ray, you remember it?
Yeah.
No?
Oh, that's a game I haven't played.
Yeah.
I did play, I think it was a Jalco game for the Super Nintendo. It was some kind of volleyball game.
Kings of the Beat? No, that was Ultra, I'm sorry.
I think it was called Dig and Spike.
Yeah, that might be on here. We'll have to search it.
Yeah.
By the way, kudos to NESguide.com for having these organized. To research this made it so much easier. So NESguide.com, giving them shout outs. If you are listening to us, pop up another window, go take a look at their website, because they cover quite a bit of these.
And if there's any games that you're just finding out about on there, it's good for that too.
Yes, of course, you can write it down and start seeing screenshots. That's what made me want to play a whole lot of these games, seeing some screenshots. So like the various strategy guides, etc. Alright, going to a movie title. Rambo actually had his own game for the NES.
As it would.
And I've never actually played it.
Neither have I.
But I've heard it's weird.
This was weird. I heard the Predator game was really weird. So, R-rated movies made quite interesting NES titles. We'll just put it out there. Alright, next game was an arcade port. They're making a movie out of it this year, and we're begging the question, why?
Like, it doesn't even make sense.
Rampage.
Ralph!
Yep, basically George the gorilla, Lizzie. Ralph what was Ralph?
Ralph, I believe, was the wolf.
Yeah, he's not in the NES version. It's just Lizzie and George. But yeah, what more can you say? It's a fun game. You're on a screen. You have to destroy buildings. Actually, the people come and put bombs on them and destroy the buildings. You just can't be on them at the time. You're getting shot by helicopters, tanks. You can eat people. That's fun. You smash a window, you see a person. Oh, eat them.
Bet they taste real nice.
Yeah, some people don't. Like, you eat something, you just see them gag, like, ugh. And then you get stunned for a second.
And try not to fall off a building. Also, you will lose health.
Yeah, you lose health for that.
It's like a funny little animation too. Like when they fall off, like they cover their eyes. Like no.
It's hilarious. And it's quite a sense of humor. And then when you die, you turn into this little naked person, like crawling away. And then when you continue, you're back to like the lizard or the gorilla.
It had like its own little background story, which I'm hoping that the movie at least uses. Because I think these were like humans who were turned into
basically
who were turned into these monsters.
Basically, it was the plot of a bad Godzilla title.
And for whatever reason, it's now becoming a Hollywood movie with Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah, The Rock is playing as I don't even know who. And just seen a trailer for it. I'm like,
I have no idea who or what he's playing.
Oh man! All right, our next game on this list before we go off on movie tangents, Renegade. Renegade was actually one of the first beat-em-ups, I believe, for the system. It's made by Technos Japan. It's not that similar to Double Dragon, however. It's the sound effects are really goofy, but it's basically you're fighting a bunch of gang members on a subway platform. Most of the levels are like 1 or 2 screens long, basically. You're in a subway, then you're in a subway platform, and then you're being attacked by a motorcycle gang. You have all these moves. You can run, you can jump, jump kick. It's your standard beat 'em up, especially considering the time it was released. It was the early, like 1988. there wasn't a whole lot of reference to go around, so it's basically more for reference at this point if you want to play it. It's a fun arcade port. That's all I can really say about it. I mean, it was fun.
Have not played this one yet.
Alright, next title, Robo Warrior, made by Jalico. That game is actually fun. I seen that in a strategy guide. I was like, I want to play this game. And it's basically you're playing a cyborg. You have to go reclaim Earth, destroy evil alien empire. It was a goofy storyline, but it was a fun, like, maze-like game. It basically played off, like, some of the maze sensations that Blaster Master played off. Like, when you exit the tank, you go through the mazes. And it's kind of similar to Robo Warrior. Only, like, you know, the graphics were less defined, but it was still a very fun title. A few, like, glow-in-the-dark levels where you needed a candle to see stuff. Highly recommended for, you know, arcade enthusiasts. Another game called Seacross came out. FCI developed it. I'm very unfamiliar with this. It looks like a shooter.
Yeah, I'm unfamiliar.
Yeah, nope, not ringing a bell. Alright, Skate or Die, published by Konami, aka Ultra. Nintendo had a chip shortage in 1988, which limited titles coming out from third-party developers to 5 per year. To get around this, Konami formed Ultra Games and released some of their other titles through the Ultra label. Obviously, the most famous one being Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. However, Skate or Die was developed from an arcade game by Electronic Arts, who weren't making games for consoles at the time. So they ported it over to Konami. Konami made the original Skate or Die. It's basically there are 5 events. And you start off in a skate shop, and you have to skate to some of these events. It's basically a high score fest. There's very little, like, tricks, you know, but it was still a fun game, especially considering there's 5 games in one. And it was, again, like most of these titles, more fun as a 2-player game, because it's always fun to do the pool joust with 2 different players, you know, and try to knock the player off the board. Nikki, you played this, I believe?
I haven't, but I've seen you, like, I've watched you play it.
We played it, yeah, I've done
it was
on
fun.
Twitch. Ray, I know you've played this game.
As a kid, yes.
I believe, wasn't there a story about Skate or Die, like, with the metal band? Mm-hmm.
I'm sure a metal band...
The guy from Zaster, was it?
Oh.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's Skate or Die 2. That was later
sorry.
on. Oh, yeah, no, there's... Funny part, there's this black metal band named Leviathan,
That's it.
which... Basically, it's a one-man... It's depressed... It's called depressive suicidal black metal, which sounds very happy, doesn't it? But it's very slow, brooding... Like,
Lots
you know,
of screaming.
Very aggressive music. Yeah, a lot of screaming, a lot of this, that. It's not for everyone. I think the majority of our listeners might just, like, dismiss it, so that's okay. But how does this tie in? Skate or Die 2 featured a skater on the cover jumping off a 4-story mall with a board. You know, basically, I think trying to do a trick to go to the next level or something. He wasn't really doing it, obviously. It was photoshopped in or whatever the program was. But that skater happened to be the guy behind Leviathan. So that was a very interesting trivia question. You're looking at the Skate or Die 2 cover, and you're like, hey, that guy's in a metal band now, you know, screaming, growling. And it's like, oh, look at him. He's like all happy jumping off the mall, and okay. Yeah, no, that's, you know, the sequel, which is a very fun game. Skate or Die, the original, though, was released in '88, and it was a fun competition card. You had 2 players over. It was always fun to better your high score and just keep playing. Another game I played on Twitch here, Spy vs. Spy, came to the NES in 1988. I misidentified it as 1986 because that's what the title screen said. It was actually produced for computer systems in '86, and then I believe ported over to both the NES and the Sega Master System at the same time in '88. It's a very primitive title, but it's very fun. It's, you know, it's based off the Mad magazine comics. You know, basically you're either the white spy or the black spy, and you have to figure out creative ways to kill each other while picking up all of these objects hidden about the labyrinth and escaping into a plane. If you've never played it, look for our YouTube where we actually did play it. All right,
It's supposed to be like a 2-player game. There is a 1-player mode, but it's way too easy.
yeah, the computer's dumb as a ton of bricks, so it's more fun as a 2-player mode. All right, now the other game that came out that we all have played here. This one we've definitely all played. We're talking, of course, Super Mario Brothers 2.
I've played this before.
You played Super Mario 2.
Of course I have. I would always pick Princess Peach.
Yes. So, yeah, if you didn't know the story, basically, Super Mario 2 was developed in 1986 for the Famicom. It went through developmental, and it was extremely hard to the point where it would challenge, some of the most hardened Super Mario Brothers players. It was the same concept, though, right down to the music. Just the graphics were a little better, but exact same concept, same platforming. You could pick Mario or Luigi this time. It got to America, it was test played, and the Nintendo of America developers said absolutely not, because this is going to be a disaster if they released it, because kids are just going to not like it. It's just going to be too much of the same, etc. So they sent it back to Japan and told them, hey, well, what do you got for us? They happen to have, developed by some of the same team that developed the Super Mario Brothers games, a game called Dream Factory Doki Doki Panic, which was very Arabian Nights themed. Even one of the characters wore a turban. One was like a princess, etc., like an Arabian princess. It was cutesy. It was for some Japanese manga, I believe. But it was completely foreign to U.S. audiences, so they wouldn't get the manga or the references. So that's why it was never released here. So they just put some Mario Brothers sprites onto it, adapted the 4 characters into Mario, Luigi, Toad, and the Princess Peach, and re-released it as Super Mario Brothers 2. That's why it was so different, but you know what? We didn't care, because this is one of the most addicting games for Nintendo.
Yo, it really is.
The fact that they eliminated the timer and you can scroll back through a level and find all these hidden tricks made this game basically, I call it a long player, basically. Like thinking of albums and LP. This is basically one of those games where you were basically in it through a long haul if you're playing this game. Actually, ironically enough, the first Nintendo game I ever beat.
I think the really cool thing is, obviously I used to play Princess Peach because, I'm a girl, she's a girl, but, she was, she was probably, to me, the best character that you could actually play as.
She had that float.
She had that float, yeah. You could, hold one of the vegetables over your head and you could just float over the entire, not the entire
float
stage,
for,
but
2
you could
seconds.
float for a while.
Well, yeah, it's 2 seconds, but every time you land, you can jump and float again. There's no, charge meter for that.
Yeah, it's because of her skirt physics. Which we would
Supposedly.
learn later on, because, I take all these classes now, so I get to know what everything is.
Well, Luigi can jump higher.
Yeah, Luigi can jump the
Does
highest.
anybody care about Luigi?
Yeah, I do, damn it. I always pick Luigi.
I'm kidding, Luigi's fine.
Nothing but Luigi.
It was Year of Luigi a couple years ago.
Yes, it was. Although, what did Nintendo really do with that?
They released at least 3 Luigi-related games.
Oh,
Yeah.
by the way, it was Princess Toadstool back then, not Peach, remember?
Oh, yeah.
I'm calling it Peach because I'm calling it Peach. Don't correct me.
Anyway, long story short, we got the original Super Mario Bros. 2, released for the SNES on the Super Mario Classics title under Super Mario The Lost Levels.
I think I've played Nothing But Luigi before.
You played through this game as nothing but Luigi.
Yeah.
Nothing but air.
I have. Actually, I thought I was the only one picking Luigi the entire time. And, people, all my friends used to hate him because, his jump physics. But after picking him so many times, the jump physics are the back of my hand, and it felt really weird playing as anyone else.
Didn't he have the little kicking scissor legs?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Feels weird thinking I liked to pick Toad as a kid because he picked stuff up faster.
Yeah, Toad was the lowest jumper. I think he had the slowest speed, but he was able to pick stuff up the fastest, and if he was carrying something, it didn't slow him down. He was going the same speed. So I guess Toad was good. I did use Toad a bit, for a challenge.
Used him a little bit, yeah.
I didn't use him too much, though. Alright, apparently another title released Super Team games for the Power Pad. I didn't own a Power Pad, so
Neither did I.
can't say anything about that.
I only just got one last year.
Yeah, Superman. And that's the other title. Superman for the NES. This was covered a bit by the Angry Video Game Nerd. It's not, believe it or not, as bad as Superman 64 was.
Yay, Superman 64!
This is considered one of the worst games ever released for a next-gen system.
It's like one of the worst games of all time, apparently.
One of the worst games. Not the worst, one of the worst.
No, I said that. One of the worst.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah, but Superman was just an awkward game. You could jump like 6 times. Obviously, I know he's Superman, but even as Clark Kent, he could jump 6 times the length of the screen. It was a little ridiculous. And also, after you lost enough health, if you got Superman, you get to use all these superpowers, like where you're limited. You know, each superpower has a meter. You could, of course, like every time you kill an enemy, you get power-ups for those meters, etc. But Superman was one of those titles where the first game you could get extremely lost because you could wander all around Metropolis and be somewhere that has absolutely nothing to do with what you're doing. You get totally lost. You have no idea where you're going. You could go through the sewer screen for like an hour going, oh, there's got to be something down here. It's got to be something. And then you come across the end and you're like, I did that for nothing. There's nothing down here.
You know what was down there? Zod Gang.
Oh, yeah. Bad. Another game that was translated bad. Instead of like General Zod, it was Superman foils Zod Gang.
It was an Egyptian with a whip.
Yeah. Yeah. Zod, of course, being from Superman 2. Yes. That's all I gotta say about that one. Another LJN title is up here. TNC Surf Design, Wood and Water Range. That was the game that featured the gorilla surfing and the cat in the tuxedo, basically surfing. And then you have the little Archie-looking kid and the dude of the witch doctor mask and on the skate section. It was basically a tie-in to a surf company in Hawaii. Yeah, TNC was basically they're known for their surfboards, and obviously in the 80s they were known for some fashion too, because the surf culture was pretty popular in 1988, 1989. Everyone started using Radical and Cowabunga thanks to the Ninja Turtles adopting it, but it came from the surf culture, you know, Hawaii and California, etc., etc. So,
no, you can't see what I'm doing. Obviously, I'm doing the little what do they call that? Hang ten. Yeah.
Hang 10. Yeah. I didn't know what you were doing.
Yeah, I think it's they call it hang 10. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, the game was obviously LGN. It was kind of stupid. The skating was a lot better than the surfing. The surfing left you no clues of what you actually had to do. You figure it out after a while, and even then, you really don't. The skateboarding was a little different. Some of the jumps were a little off time, but the skateboarding was fun. The only problem is after about round 6 or 7, everything repeats itself. Basically, everything goes into a loop, and all you're trying to do is better your score. So, you know, this is definitely worth a rental. I had no issues with this game renting it. I used to have a blast renting it from this one video store that used to be open, but fortunately, it's not a game you really want to own, you know? Alright, next game is a Tengen game called Vindicators. Never played it. It's supposed to be based on arcades. Anyone play it?
Nope.
Nope. Alright, skipping it. Wheel of Fortune. The home game of Wheel of Fortune.
It's very much like the TV show.
Yeah, if you've seen the TV show, it's basically the same thing.
We literally just watched it before this podcast.
Yeah, we just watched it. Alright, another game from LJN. This one was a good one, released in 1988, based on an extremely popular movie for 1988. Of course, talking about Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Who did actually frame Roger Rabbit? Watch the movie and find out. However, the LJN game was, again, LJN experimented, let's put it that way, with some of their control schemes. And it didn't make it too easy to figure out what exactly you had to do. You had to read the manual thoroughly in order to figure out the techniques. And even if you did that, it was still not impossible to really figure out everything without a little trial and error. Ray, you've played this game, I hope?
A little bit.
Really? I'm surprised you haven't really dug into this, because this was this movie was everywhere in 1988.
I remember you had to call an actual phone number to progress in the game and hear a message.
Thank you.
Which is now
bringing that up.
Which is now a porn 900 number thing.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh, here's the funny part. I was actually talking about this when I was streaming Final Fantasy. That was, I think, part that got cut off with audio. I was doing the sliding number puzzle, and I was like, okay, it's just basically a sliding number puzzle. I have to keep it entertaining while I'm trying to do this. So I was like, this is not the 1-900 number from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's basically on the story. There's one part in the game where you get into the Ink and Paint Club after you find the password to get past the bouncer. Basically it mirrored the movie. Jessica Rabbit's performing. You're basically searching this nightclub. In one of the tables in the nightclub, you find a phone number where inside the game you couldn't dial it anywhere because there were no phones like that. However, it was a 1-900 number. You could write it down, basically stay on the screen until you hit select. You could write down said number, call it from any phone, obviously with your parents' permission and however much in that minute, and you got a pre-recorded message from Jessica Rabbit. I don't know who Jessica Rabbit's voice actor was in that game, the actress. I forget. But you got her basically giving you a pre-recorded message talking about the game, giving you hints, tips, all kinds of tricks, tips, etc. Apparently, after a while, it got disconnected, and if you call said number now, it's probably a porn line. So, if you get the call girl on the other side, you could just, tell her to talk like Jessica Rabbit. I don't really fucking know what you're into, and I'm not going to get any more into that, so let's get to the next game. Which is World Class Track Meet. What?
I said, hello, how can I help you today?
Oh my god. That is disturbing.
Yeah, it really is. As you were saying about World Class and Track Meet.
Yeah, I think you have a career. You set up a 1-900 number and just sit back.
Oh no.
Oh shit, I don't have to go to college anymore.
There you go.
Student loans all paid off.
You can get one of your saps to go send you my cash, Oh boy, I'm giving Evil Nikki ideas.
I'll have my student loans paid off in no time.
So anyway, World Class Track Meet was for the Power Pad. It actually came packed in with the Power Pad. Later on, they reissued the Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt cart with World Class Track Meet on the same cart as well. You play with the Power Pad. It's basically track and field, hurdles, etc., etc. My friend figured out the trick. Basically, you hold on to something and you treat these the square thing, the round things on the Power Pad, like a kick drum, basically, and you're doing your best double bass impression. You will get ridiculous high scores doing that. Also, you step off the Power Pad in a certain way, it's like you were performing a never-ending jump. So, this game is very easy to hack into, basically get the tricks of the trade down. It's a fun game, though. Alright, other titles. We've got 3 more coming. This is a game called Xenophobe, which is really weird, basically, because you are playing at the top half of the screen. If you're playing in 2-player, you see the other player on the bottom half of the screen. But even if you're playing 1-player, you're only using one half of the screen. So that is annoying to look at. But basically, you're going through a spaceship, shooting enemies. I haven't played it. It was in one of my strategy guides. It didn't look all that interesting, to be honest with you. So I don't really know what to say about it.
I've never played it.
Nope.
The other game, Xevious, released by Bandai, developed by Namco. Xevious was an arcade shooter. It looks pretty primitive today.
It was one of the first, I believe.
One of the first arcade shooters? Well, there was a lot released for NES. This was a port, right?
It was a port of an arcade game,
title,
which was one of the earliest, shmups.
Yeah. And that's all you can really be said about that. 1988 was a year a lot of arcade titles got ported over to the NES. And some of them were, at that time, actually a little more obscure because these were being played in the early 80s, and kids didn't have a whole lot of disposable income to buy every one of these, so basically you picked and choose your games, and usually the arcade games got left behind because the replay value just wasn't there.
And lastly,
definitely not least, Nintendo released a doozy that year, Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link.
Yay!
Also coming in a gold cartridge. Which, I have that somewhere. Gold cartridge is awesome. Everyone criticizes this game for some odd reason. Its generation just just completely dismisses it for no reason. It was completely different from any of the other Zelda games. It was a side-scrolling adventure game. Used magic. It had a leveling system where you could level up your attack, magic, and life attributes. Basically, it takes place a year after the original Legend of Zelda. It was a true sequel, one of the few true sequels in the series, and not an alternate universe. But you have to wake Princess Zelda, a different Zelda from the first game, from a sleeping spell, put on her from, I think, a century ago. And to do that, you have to find the third part of the Triforce, called Courage. So you have to go through these 6 palaces, place a crystal ball into each statue in order to unlock the 7th palace. And then finally, the final enemy in this game is actually yourself. So the wizard casts a spell on you, you have to fight your shadow, and after you beat your shadow, bam, you get the Triforce, you wake Zelda, fall in love, the end.
The end.
Zelda.
What more could be said about Zelda? We could talk about... we actually did an entire podcast on Zelda for Link's birthday last year. That was our second podcast ever, actually.
It was. Mm-hmm.
We talked all about Zelda. This one was the black sheep of the series. It was so much fun, though, that I'm going to call a task anyone who gives this game a lot of criticism. You just simply haven't played it, or you're just judging it too harshly based on the fact that you may have played Link to the Past before you played this one. This one was a fun game. I will stand by it. I will replay it. I replay it at least once every few months. Then... to this day, it's just so satisfying going through it and beating it without getting a game over. You have lives in this game. I've definitely lost some lives, but I've beaten this game without getting a game over. And yes, please, by all means, acquire
and enjoy it.
Play this game, acquire this game, and stop bashing it. Anyway, that brings us to Z. That's the end of our titles for the NES that were released in 1988. Bunch of interesting titles here. We have a bunch of Sega Master System. Unfortunately, I've never played any of them. I know Phantasy Star is celebrating its 30th birthday this year. In America, anyway. It was released here in 1988. So, Phantasy Star is one of the most popular series of games obviously it's the most popular Sega Master System game, I believe. Alex Kidd also, that was released in 1988. I didn't have a Sega Master System, so I can't really go into that, but yeah, we did play a whole lot of Master System games later on, and obviously I am playing through Phantasy Star as we speak, not on Twitch, but I'm prepping for a massive playthrough of that game this year. And I have a little experience with Alex Kidd. I know it started with you falling, basically similar to what happens in Super Mario Brothers 2. So it's enough good things could be said about that. The Sega Master System was more popular in Europe than it was in the United States. Actually, when the TurboGrafx came out, it completely displaced the Sega Master System as a distant third, and Sega came out with their Genesis soon after. So as we said, the rest is history. Alright, this is year 1988. Now, if this doesn't make you want to say radical, eat pizza and talk like a Ninja Turtle, I don't know what will.
Yeah, something.
Cowabunga, dude. Anyway, we're going to go for now. From all of us at the 240p Club, I'm Metallic Joe.
I'm Nikki.
Nikki. Ray's taking a poop. So, we will see you next podcast, and here's to 30 more. Thanks for listening to us today. If you want more information on the 240p Club, you want to go to our website, 240pclub.com. Also, we have facebook.com/240p Club, and we're also on twitch.tv under 240p Club.